Hello, my name is Rick Houston, and welcome to the Moneyline Scene Vault Podcast, your source for all things NASCAR history. Presented by Las Vegas Motor Speedway, America's racing showplace.
He'd get to the racetrack, he'd look at the racetrack, he'd go and he'd race. Larry wanted every little detail, and it was kind of like oil and water. Everything was to a T. If anything was wrong, if there was a little grease spot on the windshield, had to fix it. He hated change. Me and Chocolate and Will and David went to the hospital, and when we got there, the preacher said he didn't make it. It was a year of hell because we couldn't get away from it.
The day NASCAR and all of us associated in any way with NASCAR forget its past, that's the day we don't have any future.
So Andy stayed through 95, 96?
Yeah.
95. Then I guess David and Bobby
Yeah, did it together.
kind of co-crew chiefed in 96. In 97, Larry Mack came in.
Right.
How big of an adjustment was that?
So let's talk about David and Bobby first. So Bobby was RCR's first engineer.
Yeah.
Bobby's really, really smart. And he was the first guy, I think, at RCR that had a computer. And we had this program, Edge program, to help you, do and do. And so Richard's thought process was David was always a worker. Nobody ever outworked. David worked hard. And you pair an engineer with a hard worker, and then, basically you have the best of both worlds. And it just didn't work that good together. A lot of the communication and this and that, and Earnhardt's looking for a feel that we just couldn't give him. So we had to put all of our eggs in one basket. So we go to Japan, and Richard cuts the deal with Larry about coming being a crew chief. Larry he's a guy, he can tell you today, right now, what the weather was at Wilkesboro in 1996.
Yeah.
He is a detailed guy.
Yeah.
And Earnhardt's more of a off the cuff guy. He wouldn't do any studying. He'd get to the racetrack, he'd look at the racetrack, he'd go and he'd race. Larry wanted every little detail.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like oil and water. And at that time, that's about the time that Earnhardt's hands were starting to fall asleep.
Because of the wreck at Talladega?
Because of the wreck at Talladega, he had a pinched nerve in his neck.
How bad was he hurt?
Bad. He's tough. He never told anybody. He just felt like that it would be okay. But later on, I could tell since I put him in the car, he had a hard time getting comfortable. He would do things. He'd move around a whole lot. And so come to find out, after about 2 years' worth, he said, "Oh, my hands keep falling asleep and I can't feel the steering wheel." And Dr. Charlie Branch ended up figuring out what the problem was. He fixed that. He actually was doing really good after that. He felt like he was whole again.
Yeah.
And I can remember him saying, even when I drive the tractor for any length of time, I get to where my hands go to sleep and I couldn't feel them. So that was a lot of what happened through the Larry years. And, Earnhardt kept thinking it was going to get better, but it never did.
He had that crazy episode at Darlington. What do you remember about that?
So everything was normal until, he got...
And you put him in the car then?
Yeah, put him in the car. He talking to us just fine and this and that. And he goes out and basically runs in the wall. He's basically passed out.
Yeah.
And we were in panic mode. We had no backup plan. Dale Earnhardt was our driver. And Richard says, "Go get Mike Dillon." Mike Dillon is standing on top of a motorhome with a beer in his hand. And he said, "Well, I only took one." Like, we need you.
Yeah.
Mike's stuff was all there, and Mike had actually tested it for us at Darlington. And you got Dale out of the car, and we didn't know it was a long time before they really figured out what happened. But it basically he had an episode, and
what kind? I mean,
so
he always told us he was abducted by aliens or whatever.
Yeah. So he basically passed out for a few minutes.
Yeah.
Some kind of neurological type deal, and after that, I think he changed his diet. He went through stress test and this and that, and they said, "Man, you are fit as you can be." And I can remember after that, nobody did anything to him, but people would bring stuff to the racetrack like, "I made you this apple pie," and he's like, "I'm not eating that.
Yeah.
I'm not drinking water that's not. I'm not." After that, it was nobody drugged him. But he was like, he wasn't taking a chance on anything. Never bothered him again after that. But basically, he don't remember what happened. He just went to sleep.
So he had the surgery, 2000. I think he was probably back. And you've talked about putting him in the car. What all did that entail? And how particular was he about what was in that car?
Highly, highly, highly particular. Okay, so he always wore the open face helmet, and so he didn't wear any cool suits or this or that. But he had a hose that he would put on that blew up towards his face. So back in the day, the open face helmet had the mic. The mic had to be just right. He would take and he would work on his goggles. They had to be just tight enough but not loose enough. He took and he would fix them himself, and he'd clean them himself, and he'd wrap them back up in the tissue paper, put them in the box, and I always had to have a spare pair. The windshield had to be cleaned on the lower corner because they always looked across the corner. So we get in the car, he wanted 2 clean rags. He put one beside his right leg, one beside his left leg. Then he would put his earplugs in, he'd lick them, put them in, and then we had a little bitty piece of tape because he couldn't stand them being on the back of his neck. Everything was just right. He would sit down, wiggle down in the seat, tighten his belts up. Steering wheel had to be exactly centered right. Shifter had to be he had his little pet peeves. Didn't want the window net too tight or too loose. He wanted to be able to get out of the car. Everything was to a T. If anything was wrong, if there was a little grease spot on the windshield, had to fix it. He hated change. When they told him he had to start wearing gloves, we were at Martinsville, and on one of the pit stops, he threw the gloves out the window, and NASCAR told him, "You will wear." He didn't want to do that. When they told him, "Okay, we're mandating that everybody has a spotter," he's like, "Well, I'm not talking to my spotter. He can stand up there and be my spotter, but I don't want him to say nothing. I don't want him to even talk to me." And it took a little while, and Danny Culler, I believe, was his first spotter. But he was set in his ways. He knew what he wanted, and that's the way he wanted it. It was, he had a plan. We get on the airplane, we'd go to eat. It would be like, "Okay, you sit here, you sit here, you sit here, you sit here, you eat this, try this." Like, "No, I don't want that. Try it. No, eat this." It was like, yeah, he was demanding, like, "Come on, eat it," It was, but he was also incredible to us. He was the ultimate team player. There was lots of times when he would come up and say, he would do it randomly. He'd come up and say, "Here's $800. Don't tell nobody I give this to you. Y'all go out and eat tonight," or whatever. And he would give it to Will one time, to me one time, to David one time, and he would always say, "We. We're a team." It wasn't I. It was always all of us. And then when stuff would go bad, and we lost the alternator. We were leading Atlanta. Alternator went bad, and ended up having to change batteries. We were leading at the time. We ended up finishing like 7th. He came in and he's like, "Man, it happens." He said, "We'll figure it out together." And it was, he understood that not everything was going to be perfect. He was a smart race car driver. Incredible.
This episode is sponsored by MoneyLine, the all-in-one personal finance app designed to help you take control of your money. As you're putting a wrap on your summer plans, prepping your next tailgate, or just looking to upgrade some things around the house, with the MoneyLine app, you're one step closer to getting your financial future on the right path. With MoneyLine, you can borrow, save, invest, and earn money all in one place. MoneyLine has been part of the racing community for years and is an official partner of 23XI Racing. Make sure to look out for the number 45 MoneyLine Toyota Camry TRD on the track this weekend in Kansas, as Tyler Reddick makes his push to advance to the round of 12 in the NASCAR playoffs. At every turn, MoneyLine is helping you set the foundation for a strong financial future. Make sure to follow MoneyLine on social media and download the MoneyLine app today. Visit moneyline.com/hotpass for more information.
I think I enjoy hearing stories like that about Dale, because that's a side of Dale that I didn't get to see. I mean, when I came into the sport, my first full-time year, well, I started with Scene in November of '94, right after he had clinched that 7th championship. I didn't see, let's just say I didn't see that side of Dale.
You're right.
Why did he have that shell? Was it just to protect himself from, everybody trying to pull on him, or what was that?
So there were about 3 sides to Earnhardt. So first thing was, he was passionate and really soft. So the girl, her name's Wessa Miller, that gave him the penny. 20 years after the '98 race, she came to RCR, and Chocolate gave her a tour, and she wasn't supposed to live. She was a Make-A-Wish child, and they had told her family that she's not going to live long. She had I'm not sure what she has, but she's doing well today. Well, so Chocolate gives him a tour, and he goes out, and she's got a little 3 sticker in the back of her van, and Chocolate said, "Hey, that's pretty cool if you still have that." And he says, "That's the van Dale bought us."
Yeah.
And Chocolate's like, "What?"
Yeah.
And after we won the 500, Dale sent a note and said, "Y'all need anything?" And like, "No, we don't need anything." Well, he had figured out somehow that they didn't have a handicapped vehicle, so Dale ordered one and bought it for them, and they still have it today.
Yeah.
And it's his whole thing was, I'm gonna give you this van, but I don't want nobody knows that I did it for you. He did a lot of stuff. I know he bought pews for the Baptist church there in Kannapolis, and he's like, "Don't you tell anybody I did this," and it's not me. My grandfather got sick, and we were at Pocono, and he flew me home to make sure he was okay, and then flew me back. And he was like, "That's just between us." He didn't want people to know that he had a soft spot.
Why?
I don't know. He wanted that tough image. He wanted to, he wanted to be the hard ass, or whatever you want to call it. But he did have, he was good to people. I can just tell you that.
All right, so that was one side. What are the other 2 sides?
So
I know the last side.
yeah, okay, yeah. So me and you talked about the Indy test. So in I believe the year was '96, and I think it was April. When we were at Daytona, Richard said, "We're going to do this top secret test that nobody knows about." It was us, Rusty, and Morgan McClure, the 4 car.
Now, is this before the first?
This was secret test.
Okay, this was a secret test
Before the tire test.
in 92.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
all right.
92.
Yeah.
And so we go to Indy. Nobody knows we're there. And A.J. Foyt's there. And we go, and Dale, I still have the spark plugs in my toolbox.
Do you
The
really?
very, very first.
Yeah.
So we go, and we run, and Earnhardt's like, man, this is incredible. Like, nobody was there. It was a closed test. And we went, they took 3 cars there, just went to see everything, how it would get, what gear you needed to run, what tire they needed to run, this and that, because they were going to have they were getting ready to announce a big test coming up, a tire test coming up. Yeah. So we ran the first laps, and we got to go through the museum with Earnhardt and this and that, and we got to know A.J. Foyt really well. So then we come back to the first tire test, and Earnhardt's like, I've done all this, I'm really not, he just kind of riding around. Well, then A.J. Foyt's like, Dale, I want to drive your car. And he's like, you're too big to drive I want to drive you. I'll get in there.
Yeah.
So Earnhardt's like, all right, AJ's going to drive, but I'm going to go run a few laps. So he went out and ran like 15 or 20 laps, and he's like, when y'all put him in this, he's getting these old tires. He is not, because Indy was the first place that we went where we had to be able to tell where you were on the racetrack, segment times. We'd never seen that before. But they have their scoring monitor is so sophisticated. Yeah. They could tell you where you entered the corner, how you were through each section. They could tell you in the middle of the corner and this and that. And that we were eating that data up because we could, of course, we were looking at, okay, we run, this fast down the straightaway, and we're this fast through the corner. And when you put new tires on, well, Dale did not want A.J. Foyt running faster than he did. So he's like, only let him run 4 or 5 laps. AJ got in the car. He went out and he run, and he was like, I can say I drove Dale Earnhardt car, which I thought that was really awesome. AJ won the 72 Daytona 5. He'd won in everything he'd ever been in, and this and that. And so then he comes in, and Earnhardt, get out of my car. Then Earnhardt wanted to drive, and he's like, put me 4 stickers on here. So he had to make sure everybody knew that A.J. Foyt didn't run faster than him.
Yeah.
A.J. invited us back to that year to come to the qualifying at the Indy 500. And so we ended up going, and it's so funny is we come in, and AJ's like, y'all come over here, I want to show you something, because they just had a transaxle issue. He goes over to the solvent tank, and he's like, look at this gear. And I've never seen anything like this before. I mean, it was straight cut gears, and this, we were used to old, standard transmission. He's like, I'm not believing it. This thing looks like, it was all burnt up and this and that. And Earnhardt's looking at it with him. I'm sitting there going like, A.J. Foyt and Dale Earnhardt in a cleaning vat looking at, gear, how amazing is this? Yeah. And it was so funny that both of them went, and they were looking out the door because there's people everywhere, and neither one of them are wanting to go out because they're going to be swarmed. Yeah. I'm sitting there thinking how different our life is for these two famous race car drivers. But I can never forget Earnhardt saying, that AJ, he's old school, man. He's still wanting to set these Indy cars up with strings and stuff, and everybody else is backing in. They were using lasers and everything else, but those two guys were so much alike. Or it's crazy. AJ became our friend since then, and we love him. He's absolutely incredible, and even today when we see him, he still talks about those times he drove Dale Earnhardt's car.
All right, so we've talked about everything up until this, and you put Dale Earnhardt in his car, 2001 Daytona 500. What do you remember about that?
He said, he used to say this all the time. He said, hey, let's get our picture made. And that was the first time he ever done a fist bump. He's like, actually, he was clean. He wanted to be clean all the time. He wouldn't. I can remember a time when we were in the truck, and I know I'm getting off course, but I think the people should hear this.
Yeah.
So they opened the refrigerator up, and there was a grease print on the cheese. And he took the whole cheese thing and threw it in the trash can, and Will Lynn said, "Hey, there's nothing wrong with that." So Will took the piece of cheese and ate it right in front of him. And Earnhardt's like, "Will, you are nasty." Will did it as a joke.
Yeah.
Like, "You are nasty, nasty, nasty. You got your greasy handprints all over the food." But
So Dale Earnhardt was a germaphobe.
he was. He did not. He did
Really?
not. And as we talked earlier, people would bring him all bake him cookies. We got to eat all because he's like, "I'm not eating that stuff. I don't know what her kitchen looks like or what. Y'all can have it." And we never got sick of any of it. But he's like, "You just don't know about people."
Yeah.
But yes, he was. He's a very, very clean person. But so when we put him in the car, we did a little fist bump thing. It's like, let's get our picture made. And just went through my normal little thing. And he was so kind of abrasive on the outside, but so genuine and so kind-hearted on the inside. There was 3 Dales. It's pretty amazing that that he kept all this, that his kindness, he kept it a secret through the years.
Yeah. So putting him in the car, was it just another race that day, or
it was a Daytona 500? I mean, there's people everywhere around us, and one thing about putting him in the car, every time you put him in the car, you felt like you were going to win the race. He had that confidence. I mean, he sat lower in the car. He was relaxed. He had a deal going on to where his heart rate actually slowed down whenever he got pressure on him.
Yeah.
And I believe it was Indy, where they were studying the drivers, and they went and checked Dale's right before the race. They checked Dale's. His heart rate was crazy. It was like 51 beats a minute, and they went and checked Jeff Gordon's, and his was like 112 or something. Yeah. And it was like he was cool under pressure. He didn't let things get to him, and he would sit there and say stuff like, "Just get me close." And he did it every single time. I mean, his ability was amazing. The thing that I don't like is that about Dale Earnhardt is perceived now. A lot of people think, well, he wrecked everybody to win races, and that's not true. I mean, he ran road course races. He won speedway races. He did a lot of winning in all different kinds of short track speedways, this and that. He loved to go fast, and he loved to win. That's all he wanted to do was win. It's all about winning races.
What do you remember about the rest of the day?
I remember, so we didn't think the wreck was no big deal. And then all of a sudden they said, "Richard's on his way to the hospital. It's not good." So me and Chocolate and Will and David went to the hospital. And when we got there, the preacher said he didn't make it. And it's like, "What do you mean he didn't make it?" He didn't make it. And so I remember we went to the plane, and we're sitting on the plane, and we don't know what to do. We're all in shock. And it's like, I'm sitting there thinking, how are we going to survive this? How are we going to make it through this? And we were waiting on Richard, and finally Richard sent a note that I'm not leaving. Y'all go and take tomorrow off, and then get everything ready to go to Rockingham. And there were so many. I mean, we were it was, we didn't have no direction, no nothing. And Richard had a lot on him. I mean, it was big, and I can remember that a lot of Richard's friends came, and he got surrounded by a whole lot of his friends that took care of him, and then all of a sudden, he's like, Dale would want us to race. So we're painting the car white. We're going to change it 29. And we back then we never said this, but back then we're like, okay, it's going to be. I think that was the lowest number available. So we said it's 2.9. It's close to 3, but it's not 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we never talked about that. So Richard came in, and it was so crazy. We were at the shop, which is a museum now, and I can remember people calling, wanting to do stuff. I mean, there's flowers everywhere. I mean, it's like you see things everywhere you go.
Yeah.
And it was like, how are we going to make it through this? And then Richard got us all together, and he said, Dale would want us to race. Got to go on. Me and him talked about this. If this were to ever happen. And so we didn't want to go to Rockingham, but it was rough. It was bad.
So you go to Atlanta, and this kid pulls off a miracle.
So
How big
so Atlanta.
how big a deal was that?
So Atlanta, we're getting ready to go to Atlanta, and Richard comes in and says, Dale had won a bunch of races. Back then, when you win Atlanta, you got a ski boat. I mean, they had which I think Richard still has 3 of them, and Teresa still has 2 or 3 of them. And Richard goes, we're going to take Dale's car. And we were all like, that's Dale's favorite car. Don't take Dale's car. And Richard's like, nope, we're going to take Dale's car. And we all kind of kicked and screamed about not wanting to take Dale's, that was, but Richard was right. If we wouldn't have took that car, Harvick wouldn't have. We basically knew that car was good for Atlanta and this and that. And the thing is that, okay, that was the first step of our healing process. We could still win without Dale Earnhardt. And, even, that year, everywhere you'd go, there would be special stuff during 3, and people asking questions and this and that. I mean, it just kept everywhere we went. I mean, it was a year of hell because we couldn't get away from it.
It was a year of hell. With all the controversy and everything that had happened the year 2000, was there ever a point in there where you just wanted to walk away and be done with this thing? Done with NASCAR?
That's why at the end of 2001 I stepped down from being chief engine builder. Because I came from, it's not Kevin's fault, but I came from, Kevin got thrown in there and did us a hell of a job.
Yeah.
Dale was our friend also, and he was the best teammate you could ever have. He took care of us. He never disrespected us, and we wanted to work really hard for him because he treated us like we were family. So it was a culture shock, and it's losing a family member. It's like he's never going to be back here. He's never going to, we're never going to see him again. And it was some of those days, you were sitting there racing and things would bring back, you see things that would bring back memories of how it was before. I mean, it was before Dale and after Dale. And it was, he was the best race car driver ever. And didn't get a chance to finish what we started. We felt like him having his neck fixed, You know, he was running those races. He was doing stuff he'd never done before. He was running, the 24-hour race and doing all this stuff and running really good. And we felt like we're finally going to have another shot because he's feeling good again. I mean, he had told us, boys, we're going to have something for him. And we were better prepared. We had more cars than we'd ever had. We'd made progress with our engines and this and that. I mean, everything was lining up for, to be a wonderful year. And then the very first race, I mean, it was rough.